Hi, my name is Doug Robare, and I'm in charge of financial lines insurance for Assicurazioni Generali, which includes directors and officers insurance and also professional indemnity. And I'm really humbled by virtue of being in a meeting with people talking about technology and funding, because that's not the space that I live. But I wanted to start off by telling you a story. I was 23 years old. I've been working in this space for over 20 years. I was 23 years old. I got a phone call from an executive who was in his late 40s, who was being sued by his directors for, amongst other things, breach of contract. He had to go to court on a Monday, and it was Thursday when he called me. He had to go to court on Monday. He basically said that he was going to be out of pocket $50,000, and did he have coverage? And as a 23-year-old, I had no bloody clue if he did. But we had a discussion, and eventually that came through. And the reason why I'm passionate about this space is actually because when it comes to startups and also entrepreneurial ventures in general, you have to think to yourself about the liabilities that live outside of your business. And I can't tell you about car insurance. I can't tell you about anything else. What I can do is talk about the real challenges related to cyber technology companies and startups, and legislatively speaking, the things that are coming on the horizon. As an aside, I'm a member of the European Financial Roundtable for data security network, data privacy network security for Assicurazioni Generali. And what I would say is, generally speaking, startups have a big issue. And the big issue is funding. Because the people that put money into the companies are actually going to expect a return. But moreover, if they don't get the return that they desire, you're going to find some litigation in your future, potentially speaking. Generally speaking, it's major shareholder. The other element that you're going to get is your customer distribution channel potentially could sue you. And it all relates to the way in which you keep the data or the way in which you, if it's correct in saying, shop out your data. So if you're a third-party provider, that's probably the biggest area that you have to think about. And why do I say that? The biggest challenge right now for companies that are dealing in the intermediary space as third-party providers of technical data, data servicing, is that the cloud multiplies liability. It multiplies it on the basis that big first-party users are using multiple startups to actually give them services. And whilst they're in the cloud, if something happens there, the magnitude is exacerbated. So I feel really humbled talking at a technology conference about liability insurance, and I don't necessarily like to talk just about insurance. It's more about the fact that you need to think about, as a startup, the future road of your success and failure. Sorry. The successes is your own road to build. I mean, that's what you guys collectively do. The failures, hopefully they don't happen, but if they do happen, you have to make sure that you're adequately secure in your business plan to ensure that if it happens, you're protected, because they are complete company killers at the SME level. Small medium enterprise is the acronym. And the reason why they're company killers is because the costs are extraordinary. Taking into consideration at the present time, if we look at things like Sony Media, a large company, they tried to get that data breach claim paid through what they thought was their, and apologies to be too technical about it, but if there are CFOs in the market, sorry, in the audience, you might understand, it's called a general liability policy. They tried to get that paid through. They've gone to the Supreme Court in the United States and it failed. They didn't get it paid. So everything you hear about in relation to Sony, that was not covered by insurance. Now, obviously, that's a large company, but think about the impact that that could have to your own organization. Specifically, if you had a massive loss in relation to data that equated to $1 million, $2 million worth of potential liability. Now, I'm not here to sell you policies. I'm just here to tell you maybe you need to think about that, organizationally speaking, and ensure the fact that from a company, you actually are thinking about the horizon in the future. As you grow, are you actually scoping out the potential things that might be a threat to you in the future? So again, I'm really humbled by talking to an audience of technology people. And when I talk about insurance, I work and have worked for 12 years in a marketplace in London in which people still walk around with what's called a slipcase of individual pieces of paper to walk from company to company to get it signed and stamped. We are not, sorry for the the reverb, we are not in technology. But what we are, unfortunately, are the people that are going to prevent you from actually getting cash back into your business. And so I say that, and I believe there was some smirks over here, which somebody knows that London space. And it's an interesting environment because insurers are trying to cope with the emergence of risk. Where is the risk horizon going? And you as an organization probably are concentrated, much like me as a profit center manager, concentrated on growth, but you don't think about the peripheral. And so what I would say to you, in many respects, is just to think about it, to have an active and open discussion with people. Because I think it was about a month ago, there was a television show in the US, which I highly recommend if you can bring it up on YouTube, called, what's it called, Last Week Tonight. And they interviewed Edward Snowden, who in the US as an American, you could view him as a traitor, or you could view him as a hero. And one of the things they asked him was, you know, like, what do you think about risk? And he said something which could be challenged. Risk, you have a risk no matter what you do in your business, okay? It's gonna be inherent in what you do, especially if you're a startup. The only time you're risk-free is when you're in jail. That's what he said. Now, it could be argued if you're in jail, you have a lot more risk. That might not be pleasurable, but you have more risk. However, what you do about it is up to you. So if you think about things, what I would suggest is actually the way in which we deal with it can be through insurance, it can be the way you organize your company, but risk is inherent in all businesses. What you need to do is just encapsulate it and take care of it. Because the biggest issue that you're gonna have is if it hits your balance sheet. And if it hits your balance sheet, what I would say is part and parcel of 20 years of my career, D&O lawsuits are company killers. They will absolutely obliterate. Insofar as if you have somebody who's a minority shareholder or even a majority shareholder of your startup and you haven't fully taken care of an underlying issue, the potential for a lawsuit is in the millions. The average lawsuit in the United States is approximately $15 million from a D&O perspective. And that's if you have US investors. And I only say that because, I mean, obviously a majority of the people in the room don't have that, and you don't want to live in that environment, and hopefully you never do. But you need to think about it, because if you're not taking care of things at home, theoretically, you can bring this on yourself. So I told you a little bit of a story before about this guy. He was in his 30s, called me when I was in my 20s. He was crying on the phone. He was basically saying that he was being sued by his investors, that he was gonna go to court on Monday. He had no idea how to do it. Insurance offered an opportunity to take care of it. But at the end of the day, and I hate to say it, we can pay bills, but if you've done something wrong, it's you who has to pay. So I mean, on that basis, and I didn't realize there was a clock here, I fully accept questions. I don't know if you have them, and I believe you have been the most active participant in the
Scaring the crap out of me.
Yeah.
Jesus. No, you say we have to talk. You say we have to talk to people. I think I know this crowd pretty well. We need, like, who should we be talking to? Should we be gathering our C-level executives? Who should? I mean, I'm all stirred up now and freaked out, but I don't know who to talk to. Do I talk to that guy? You know, what should I do?
The biggest issue right now for technology companies, and I can tell you as a global insurer, because presumably you're buying insurance from global insurers, is that you're providing services to large companies. And that is the issue.
So, I mean, I know, but sometimes those large companies will have actually contracts that say you need to be insured for this.
Yeah.
I mean, we've run into that. I run a PR firm, but we run into that. We work with AOL Networks, and I was like, oh my God, look at all this I gotta do. So sometimes it's actually built into those very contracts, but if it's not, what should we be doing? Like, how can, again, stirred up, totally paying attention, but who should we be talking to? Should we just go and talk to somebody in insurance, a specialist, just to kind of get a feel for our risk?
Yes. Okay. And I'm also a salesperson, so if you want to buy more insurance, I'm willing to sell it to you. But I think what you have to do is you have to adequately assess the fact that you have exposures out there. And even though you're going to have an indemnity agreement between the large service provider, or sorry, the customer, and also being a service provider, what you need to do is just think about, are you protected? But are you adequately protected? Because what I would say, irrespective of the jurisdictions, Bulgaria and what have you, what you need to do is think about the legislative environment and also the contracts in which you sign.
I have the right to a quick follow-up question.
Yeah,
if I'm
and there's 19 seconds, so.
A few days or weeks ago, it was there was an announcement that United Airlines or American Airlines, they had to shut the operations because the iPads of the pilots stopped. Basically, there was a breach. Yeah. I don't know if it was a breach in the balance sheet or it was a breach in the security network, but they stopped and the planes couldn't fly. So does insurance actually address that issue? Did they think about it? Is that relevant for what you're doing?
It does, and I'll go one better. Last Thursday, I was at the IATA conference in London, which is the organizing body for all airlines, and we talked about the fact that cyber liability was off the table when it came to breaches in what you're talking about, airline manufacturing. Sorry, airline functions. The following day, after we did the conference, a guy by the name of Chris Roberts was arrested by the FBI as a person of interest because in Social Network, he talked about the fact that he made a plane climb whilst in flight. And he did it through a hybrid Ethernet cable that he plugged into. I'm saying you can look it up. He did it by virtue of an Ethernet cable hybrid that he plugged into in-flight entertainment, and he put in a climb function, and he did it 15 times. That's scary, scary. Excuse me for the language, but it's scary shit. So, sorry for going over time, but yes, I mean, it's a big, big issue, specifically in relation to service industries. And that, unless somebody else has a question, is done. Thank you.